So last week we were in John 1, and the last thing that took place is Jesus began to call his disciples to follow him. So the disciples found themselves, I'm sure, asking this question: who is Jesus? Maybe you've asked yourself that question before. Maybe you're asking it right now, or maybe you've just never thought about it your whole life. You see, the Jews thought that they knew what Jesus would be like, a king coming in power and taking down the Romans. But that isn't what Jesus did. So these men who just started following him are trying to figure out, who is Jesus? Well, I want to look at these two stories told in John 2 to help us answer this question: who is Jesus? Because I truly believe it is one of the most important questions we will ever ask in our life. So when we look at the beginning of John 2, we see that Jesus and his disciples are invited to a wedding. But really quickly, the wedding is about to be ruined because they ran out of wine. During this time, that's a huge deal. I mean, it's definitely a huge deal now when you run out of food at a wedding, but that would have actually ruined the party and brought about major social embarrassment for this couple and their family. So Jesus' mom, Mary, asked him to help out. And right here, this story's already amazing. Jesus' mom, who saw him grow up, knows without a doubt that Jesus can fix this. What an amazing testimony of what she must have seen. So Jesus decides right away, okay, I'll save this party and these people. And so he tells the servants to fill up jars that are normally meant for ceremonial washing for the Jews with water. And he turns the water into wine. But not just wine, the best wine. And not just some, but more than they could ever need. Now, what does this say about Jesus? That he was just a party guy who loved wine? No, it shows that Jesus is a miracle worker. That his heart goes out to this couple whose wine ran out. And I think that the story shows us the kind of things that he is able to do in our lives too. He can take what is dead and he can make it new. He can take a bad situation and transform it. And he cares about you and what's going on in your life right now, just like he cared about this couple and their wedding. I think this passage shows us that life with Jesus isn't just okay like the wine, it's the absolute best and only way to find real satisfaction. So we see from this passage that Jesus is a miracle worker, and that he is quite literally the life of the party, and he wants to be that in your life. But don't be mistaken. The same Jesus that wanted to keep the party going on and save this couple from social embarrassment is the exact same Jesus in our next story that tears the party to the ground. In John 2, verses 13 to 25, Jesus and his disciples leave Capernaum and go to Jerusalem for the Passover. When they get to the temple, Jesus sees that a place that is supposed to be somewhere to worship God and bring your sacrifices to the altar has become corrupt. People are turning the temple into a market. They're misusing and abusing the place that is supposed to be holy. So does Jesus pat them on the back and make them some wine? No, it says that he flips over the tables and he drives the animals out. The people in the temple go on to question his authority to do this, and he hints at the resurrection, and it's a great thing to look at in depth, but I want to stop here. Jesus was angry. People were abusing the house of God, so angry that he flipped the tables and called them out. Now you may be wondering how this relates to you. But if you are a Christ follower, let me remind you that in 1 Corinthians 6, Paul says to the believers in Corinth that our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. So I just want to remind you that the same Jesus in the first story that wants to make something new, do miracles, help us in our times of need, and keep the party going is the exact same Jesus who flipped the tables in anger when there was sin and abuse. So I don't think it's an accident that these passages are side by side. I think that the writer wanted us to see that we can't have one side of Jesus without the other. Because God is both merciful and just. He is both loving and hates our sin. He wants to save people, but he also calls them to be holy. So I don't know about you, but I think a lot of times I like to choose one side of Jesus and forget about the other. What about you? Do you only see Jesus as a holy, rightly angry, sin-hating God? And some of you know Christians who only seem to know God like that because you see the way that they treat other people. Or do you only like to imagine Jesus as a loving guy, the life of the party, the miracle worker, and forget that he calls us to live holy and get rid of the sin and the hate in our lives? And once again, some of you know Christians who only see God like that too. So I want to go back to my question at the beginning. Who is Jesus? I think for the disciples, in order to answer this question, they needed to see Jesus both at the wedding and the temple. And I think the same is true of us. So what about you? Which picture of Jesus do you need to be reminded of today?